report, the next performance will be presented by the associate professor of our Department of Social Communication at Tomsk State University, Irina Guzhova. And she's going to talk on visualization of the city culture code in branding online communication.
Good evening, my dear colleagues. And the theme of my report is visualization of the city culture code in branding online communication. And I take Tomsk for example. What we know about our society and even about the world we live in, we know due to mass media, wrote the well-known German sociologist Niklas Luhmann in the late 20th century. However, over the last decades, Luhmann's media reality has undergone profound change. Nowadays, in the epoch of the total expression of the internet, when new media have leveled of state, geographical and social borders and activated intercultural links, every web user regards himself or herself as an inhabitant of the global village. New media technologies, on the one hand, have made the world familiar, accessible and desirable, but on the other hand, have led to virtual competition of cities as places of residence or business transaction activities. When planning travel or looking for a place of study, we strive to get an idea about countries and cities by means of the internet, and this idea undoubtedly exerts influence on our choice. Why does a contemporary person in search of reliable and complete information prefer new media over traditional mass media? New media are brief and symbolical. They prefer a picture rather than text. New media are open. An internet user has an access to them. This characteristic of the new media have made for their popularity as contemporary means of mass communication. In this connection, a necessity of the presence in new media of any cities aspiring to draw interest on the side of potential guests is without doubt. The city image is formed today not only by its airport, roads and developed infrastructure, but also by the official city portal, by the work of the electronic government, and the content of social networks and forums. The problem of creating the city image online, digital or electronic image, is particularly vital for relatively small cities of Siberia, because geographic remoteness from Europe and the central part of Russia is in itself a barrier for the development of their tourist and investment attractiveness. Here, there is often a gap between a claim of international integration and insufficient attention to the positioning of the city in new media. Authorities set up typical sites for unique cities, ignoring the importance of English language version of the official city portals. The multimedia resources of the web for creation and promotion of the city image are not used in full measure. At the same time, some of these cities have a significant economic, science, educational and cultural potential in order to become a center of attraction for entrepreneurs, creative and intellectual elite. Those cities have an old history and retain original architectural aspect. In the context of the problem under consideration, the available digital image of Tomsk is a good illustration of the fact that new media as universal means of communication can come in conflict with the uniqueness of the objects they promote. On the geographical maps of Russia, all not so big Siberian cities appear as tiny circles of certain size and color. Their names are different, but their representation are identical. A new media map allows the city to express its uniqueness, to convey the city's special atmosphere and present its people and tourist attractions. With that said, it is important to keep in mind that this image is formed in the conscience of most different social groups under the influence of various contexts. In this situation, the task of image makers is to make a mosaic of images into a single symbol that would take into itself the key positive connotations connected with an idea about the city. Here, one cannot do without addressing of the communicative practice to the experience of the theoretical interpretation of the communication process. Taking into account the fact that image communication prioritizes such values as understanding and dialogue, the communicator's most relevant methodological perspective appears to be a semiotic tone of the problem. Visualizing a city is simple in a certain sense by means of photograph and video recording. However, if a need for formation of the unique city's recognizable image are assumed, the questions arise. What and how is to be visualized? One must look for the text that convey positive connotation necessary for the city's image. In search of such text, we have turned to architecture as a form of mass communications and expressive art form. Nowadays, we observe that architects and specialists in social communications form an effective professional tandem. In fact, there are numerous examples of enlivening a city's tourist life as the result of erecting a single architectural construction. It can become a city's visiting card. Thus, behind the depiction of the Statue of Liberty, we discern New York, and behind the Eiffel Tower, we see Paris. However, what matters is not only the uniqueness and dimensions of these artifacts. The representativeness of those constructions as symbols consists in properly guessed cultural codes. How can one catch the culture code of a city? Like the way Carl Jung singled out the archetypes of the collective unconscious, Claude Rapin, the American psychologist of French descent, is searching for culture codes in the depths of individual experience. Rapin considers that our attitude to an object, and this in its turn determines our behavior, is formed in early childhood under the impact of the culture in which we are raised. In this way, the memory of culture meanings is rooted in the culture unconscious. Rapin put his methods at the service of marketing departments of largest corporations. He claims that the knowledge of a culture code helps producers promote not only goods, but ideas and brands. But it is not always necessary to submerge too deeply into the human unconscious in order to find culture meanings hidden there. An individual makes explicit his or her emotions, experiences, and the attitude to the world in what is called the aesthetic mastering of the world. And it is expressed in works of for creative work and art. Cultures codify their meanings in symbol signs, in behavior, in myths, and other systems of modeling the world. The culture model of the world is transferred by humans onto everyday life and interrelations, as well as projected on their dwellings. After structural anthropology by Claude Lévi-Strauss, the culture encoding is understood exactly in such a way by a representative of the structure semiotic approach, and by Roland Barthes, by Yuri Lotman, and by Umberto Eco. A culture code is the aggregate of meanings and values of this or another culture which take part in the process of meaning giving to natural phenomena and artifacts and make up the meaning core which allow identification and interpretation of a given culture. It is a key to understanding the culture's meanings, values, texts. In the process of confrontation of globalization and multiculturalism, determination of unique culture codes becomes such an important principle of effective communication as the formation of universal codes, due to which a dialogue of cultures is carried out. To such universal values, one may refer careful attitude of people to their homes, understanding of aesthetic values of national and artistic styles in architectural artifacts. The recognizable denotation, home, and connotative expectations allow one to view the architecture of any culture as a text and try to unravel its code, feeling that it is in this text that a key to understanding the meanings of its creator is concealed. Regrettably, standard residential quarters of contemporary cities more often than not do not contain any living text, referring to national artistic traditions. In this context, construction of constructions of past centuries appear to be more valuable artifacts, whose text contains strong cultural, national and regional codes. Returning to the problem of the quest of the culture code of the old Siberian city of Tomsk, one may clearly state that the city has such artifacts. Tomsk stands out among other not so big cities of Siberia in that it has retained about 700 wooden housing structures of the late 19th century, early 20th century. A little more than 100 of them are registered as architectural monuments of federal and regional significance. For many years, a city target program has been implemented in Tomsk aimed to maintain and revive wooden architecture. Tomsk wooden architecture. Of greater cultural interest are houses when the influence of eclectics was reflected in architects' inclination for ornamentation. A return to old Russian traditions and turning to folklore led to house-covered decorations. The resulted in turning a house into a fairy tale, an imposing mansion in old Russia. Tomsk wooden architecture as a city symbol conveys positive connotations. Tomsk is a city with an old history. Tomsk is a city which values its cultural heritage. It is exotic, original, ecology-friendly city. The next layer of connotations immerses the culture interpreter into revealing the city's culture code. Tomsk is an old Russian city. It transpires from stylistic of construction. Tomsk is a not so big Siberian city. There are narrow, cozy little streets, fairy wooden terraces among the boundless forest of taiga. And here lives a fairy tale in which we grew up. Due to representative properties of photography and video recording, a city architecture can convey its meaning in the framework of image communication. Media mediation of the work and photography can even amplify this or other connotations because the architectural text can be placed in a certain context given by the communicator. Symbol identification as a culture code is determined by means of the attitude to the sign of the careers of culture. The status of a sign as iconic or symbolic depends on where and how often, in what context and in what communicative circumstances the sign is used for conveying meanings. In what context of new media can Tomsk wooden architecture become a symbol and work for an attractive image of the city? In this connection, it is conditionally possible to single out three directions of professional image making. The first direction presupposes a visual turn in official internet resources of the city and oblast administration because it is the main gateway to the city in new media. No one will look for a city symbols in the web space. The web users must encounter them literally at every step. The culture code of which we spoke above must be discerned in every visual element. The image of the Siberian term was actively applied in graphic subject of the Tomsk brand book that was developed for the city's 400th anniversary. However, it has practically found no reflection in the new media format. The Tomsk administration site interface, presented in brown tones, refers us rather to those objects of wooden architecture which demand serious restoration work. Just as a house in bad condition calls forth negative associations, so can archaic design and site navigation bring to naught the culture code's entire connotative potential. The second direction of city image making is connected with the content of social networks, wiki tools and services, photo and video hosting services. The city and oblast administration can set up its own internet resources on the platforms of social media. As an alternative, one can support interesting electronic projects of the city dwellers and develop such new media technologies as crowdsourcing. In any case, access to the social media space will be seen as an invitation to dialogue, which will facilitate image communication. And the third direction of image making is mastering of the latest information technologies such as QR codes and augmented reality technology for popularization of the city's culture and architectural heritage. Thus, in virtual competition, the city's symbol visualization conveying its culture code in new media formats can become a unique selling proposition and make the city's image attractive for its townsfolk and guests. Here it must be understood that the object image uniqueness emphasizes not only a successfully found symbol, but also how that symbol is placed in the message. New media can become a means of symbol mass multiplication, which is not bad for recognizability of the referent, but harmful for the city's culture code, which comes to life only due to correctly given context. The symbol significance determines the aesthetic attitude to it. Therefore, it becomes very important for the communicator to keep the city's image in the aesthetic context. The automatic use of new media tools must give way to an artistic approach to electronic communication. And we can see on the slide a good example of using the culture code Orenburgsky show as the lace of the background of the official city site. In reality, Tomsk is a many-sided city. The city center abounds in architectural monuments, but the sleeping micro-districts are entirely made up of standard housing structures. Nevertheless, both guests and city dwellers note that the city's culture code really resides in its wooden terms. To preserve them is to preserve the city's unique aura. New media, due to the wealth of technological resources present in them, are capable of maintaining a continuous interest of audiences to the culture code of Tomsk, but they cannot replace the real referent, the wooden architecture itself, whose loss will lead to the disappearance of the culture code. And thank you for attention.
Thank you very much.